Everybody, what is going on? It is Crypto Bobby. Hope you are having a great day, great night, wherever you're watching from. Have a special edition of Crypto Happy Hour here with you, and have a special guest for you, Ledger Status. What's going on, Ledger? How you doing?
Hey man, how are you? Thanks
Doing
for having
very
me.
well. Doing very. I appreciate you taking the time to join, and I've been excited about this one for quite a little bit of time here. I know we've had some other guests on the channel in the past that have been a more technical or TA focused than I myself am, and that's added a lot of value to myself personally. I think that's added a lot of value to you guys. So I'm excited about taking the time to learn a little bit about what Ledger is, what's happening with Ledger, and kind of all your ask questions as well. So we'll kick things off just with a quick introduction on your end, kind of your background and how you got into crypto, and we can take it from there.
Sure. Yeah. I got into it at the same time I think a big group of people did, which was like that springtime Ethereum hype cycle. I was probably buying Ethereum at prices where some people thought was already unbelievable. I don't remember what the exact pricing was, but that 70 to $150 week or so. I don't know if you remember that,
Yeah.
where Ethereum was just going nuts and everybody was like, wow, I bought this for $7 or $10 and it's 10x. And I was like, I'll buy that. you know. Um, so my first experience was riding Ethereum through that kind of $400 range, and I got lucky and sold the top. And then got I was a little worse off when I kept trying to buy the dip a little too soon. Um, and then from there, I was hesitant about Bitcoin into the summer. So I was one of those people that had heard about crypto and heard about crypto and heard about crypto. I come from the web world. I've got friends that bought Bitcoin in under $100, and I just never did. And but once it hit me hard, and it really connected. And the fork drama and all that stuff that was going on had me a little more hesitant about Bitcoin. So I was digging into all the fundamentals and everything, but over time, I both got the bug for altcoins, and then started to respect more and more the role that Bitcoin plays, kind of as Papa Bear of the crypto ecosystem, and the importance of Bitcoin's health, and just digging into everything. Since then, though, I've really kind of, I guess, gotten my reputation on the technical analysis side of things, and I've been investing in the traditional markets since I was like 15 years old. So um, I was able to bring some of that with me, and then of course learn a ton more once I got into crypto, because everything just moves so much faster. We have stuff, market cycles that can over a month or two that take years in the traditional markets. So you
it's
learn a lot more this way.
It's crazy how fast things move. And I think one thing that you mentioned that's kind of funny too is just like, I feel like a lot of people get in, like when I got into crypto, one of the big reasons or one of the interesting things to me was, weirdly enough, Dogecoin in like December of 2013, early 2014. And then I feel like a lot of people kind of get started in the altcoin space and then learn to maybe like respect Bitcoin a little bit more, and then just continue to kind of go through kind of go through and check out altcoins in more depth as well. So I think it's kind of funny to see that progression for a lot of people, including myself and yourself too.
Yeah, and I had even heard of Doge at some point, and it's just one of those, a lot of people do this, but you hear things, but then it just doesn't connect. Like, oh, you know what? Like, this is something I could put money into and maybe make some money off of, and I don't know why. But better late than never. So I'm actually up on the 1 year anniversary of my first crypto purchase. So it's been it feels like it's gone fast and also extremely slow, because every day is a tumult sometimes.
That's funny. I'm just fixing the view count here because it didn't properly adjust itself. But as far as things go now, I think we can jump into maybe what you're seeing recently. I know like you said, you've gotten a lot of respect throughout the entire kind of community from a technical analysis perspective, and doing some analysis on a number of different altcoins across the board, charting, things like that. Would love to just get your overall feel for the market, like the general market, and then maybe we can go into specifics a little bit more. But kind of what you're seeing right now in your overall thought process as you're evaluating things at this point in time. Would love to hear that.
Sure. I think in general, it's hard to um, equate fundamentals and price action because I mentioned, 2017 Bitcoin itself pumped like crazy, despite all of this uncertainty that we had in the market of what was going to be the effect of these forks, and now you've got Bitcoin plus some other garbage name, like
Cash,
every
private, everything
every
in the world.
every Bitcoin fork scam that you can possibly think of, we've got it. And 2017 had a lot of uncertainty in terms of fundamentals, yet the price 17x or whatever from January to December. And now I feel like some of that's behind us. Like I feel like even Bitcoin Cash has really been relegated to being Roger Ver's, pump and dump scheme, whatever you want to call it. And all the other ones have really taken a back seat. Their market caps may be too high, but none of them are really threats to Bitcoin. And at the same time, we're seeing proper futures markets pick up Bitcoin, and we're seeing ETF rumors where like actual government organizations are saying that these should be considered. We're seeing the Lightning Network take off, and all these very fundamentally bullish things. And meanwhile, we're having 70% price drawdowns. So you really have to separate yourself sometimes between price action and fundamentals, and not get too caught up in that. But at the same time, understand that fundamentally Bitcoin is strong and also highly resistant and will be around. And in the long run, I think Bitcoin is incredibly cheap right now. What everybody's trying to figure out though is, okay, does that mean that 6,000 ish was the bottom? Or are we going to retest that again? Or are we going to go to 2 or 3,000? And people are calling for all of those things. And you're trying to combine this thought process of like, well, we've got all this over the counter action. Like people can't get enough Bitcoin, people with $100 million trying to come in here and buy thousands of Bitcoin and can't get filled, can't find sellers. Saw a stat like 92% of the people in the market right now are buyers. And it's this battle of, well, can all of that exist and then also go down to 2 or 3,000? Because nobody wants to get stuck in the market right now and then go to 2 or 3,000,
Yeah.
because that means Bitcoin goes to 2 or 3,000. And in my opinion, if we go below prior lows, altcoins not only go back to the bottom of this accumulation zone we've seen, they get crushed. That's like a lot of projects straight up die when we enter like long dark winter for altcoins, and people don't want to get stuck holding those bags. And I think that it's really focus on the market in the sense that uh, your fundamentals are important. So you
For sure.
try to choose what you're going to trade based on fundamentals, and then you choose when you're going to trade. So when you enter and exit based on the technicals. So that's the way I'm trying to approach the market. And one of the things I've learned over the past year is that I didn't want to miss like some specific coin's move, and then I ended up in too many positions. And when you have too many positions, one, you're more likely to just basically be an index of the market. So you're not going to beat the market. You're just kind of riding the wave of what the whole market does. And then number two is you can't react very quickly. So if you do have some like significant event and like everything goes down together or whatever, you can't sell out of those positions. So now I'm much more uh, I would recommend for most people, not that it's financial advice, but for myself, I want to be in fewer strategic positions, and then maybe have a long tail of very small positions that are kind of those lottery ticket type bets. So that's the way I'm trying to approach the market. Have smart bets. Be willing to make my 30 or 40%. Like I'm not a believer that you have to wait for the 10x or the 100x. Sometimes you can 1.5x or 2x several times while other people are just living through these huge market cycles trying to get that 10x or 100x or whatever.
For sure, for sure. So one person, just real quick, Casper mentioned, can you put Ledger's Twitter handle in the bottom? So it's actually, it should be in the description here. There's a link to Ledger's Twitter handle if you're not following him on Twitter yet, or and also his YouTube channel as well. He has a YouTube channel too, so you can check out both of those. Should be in the description below underneath the first paragraph there. And sorry if there's any lag on the feed. Try to adjust things. Apologies on that. Might be just my Wi-Fi. So let me know if that continues to be an issue, but sorry on that front. Hopefully the audio at least makes up for it. But yeah, I guess going to that point and kind of diving in a little bit deeper, I think you had mentioned, kind of having a couple, the breakdown maybe from like a position perspective. I would love to hear your thought process too, just as far as maybe like the number of positions you have open. I feel like there's a lot of different strategies. I've heard people that I feel like it's there, there's people like that I've heard on the Crypto Street podcast, like Nitacoin or maybe like Not So Fast, who have maybe like 50, 100 positions open at some points in time. Some people out there might have 5, 10 positions open. When you're looking at kind of your portfolio as well, is there a specific number that you like to target or something that you feel comfortable there when you have a number of kind of holdings in your portfolio?
Yeah. In terms of a specific percentage, it's not that I would say like always put 1%, 2%, something like that, or always put 10%. It's more of one of those things, be ready to react. And if you're gonna have something in there that is a small percentage or you have a lot of positions, you need to be willing to approach that with a long-term lens. And I like to say someone like Not So Fast or Neocoin, those guys are probably earlier to a project than you are, certainly than I am.
Yeah,
And I'm not going to get the type of pricing that they get on one of those exciting projects that they can hold for forever. So if you're doing more trend trading, or you know your decision to buy or sell can be affected by the price movements within like a week or even a month, like they're looking at things in longer term views. So like they're buying bottoms of market cycles that then may last months for just the accumulation before it makes the move that they sell into, and then they sell into that pump whenever that may happen. um, and Not So Fast even has a list of coins where he's like, I put some amount of money in these and I'm literally going to let them sit for 4 or 5 years, knowing that maybe 80% of those that he has that long-term lens will actually just die. They'll just be gone. Like he has a, deep and dark closet of ghosted crypto assets. And you have to be ready for that, because then you're going to, out of that rubble, you'll have, some like butterfly coin that does 100x or more. And that's just a totally different strategy. That is a highly research based fundamental strategy where you're just approaching the market completely differently. I'm trying to approach the market from a baseline of fundamental research, but I'm generally looking at stuff that not like one developer in their basement and I know who they are because I've talked to them on Telegram or something like that. Like the stuff I'm looking at, they probably have a team, they've probably already gotten some press, they might have some funding, whether it's proof of work or an ICO or whatever. Like I'm looking for something that's got some headwinds behind it already. So
sure.
I'm looking for smaller price moves, and I'm looking for what's the impulse event that's going to allow this to be a successful trade. And that's why for me, unless it's just a total win where I get in on something where it is a small market cap, $5-10 million is kind of that small market cap range now. And I think, man, this does have the ability to be $100 million project or $1 billion project. And those I might ride a little differently. So I did that with some projects last year. And there are certain ICOs, like you're working with AirSwap now. It's a great example where like sometimes they have the ICO, there's a hype cycle, and then they have this kind of slow bleed effect. But it doesn't mean the team's not working. So like if you're still fundamentally, I'm assuming you're working, Bob.
No, nobody's working here. I flipped the camera around.
So if you're excited about the project, you're fundamentally interested, eventually it will have the price action to reflect the fundamental baseline. So then you're just looking for when's the right time to enter, when's the right time to exit. So
For
that's how
sure.
I'm trying to look at working so far. And sometimes I'll hold something for like a day. Like if I catch something right before that impulse event and then it goes up 50%, I'm probably selling. Like if it goes up 50% in a day, I'm probably selling and I'll try to catch a retrace or something.
For sure. So somebody asked an interesting question, and it's, I guess, pretty general, but did I miss the boat? And I think that's extremely general, but maybe just going to your kind of medium to long term views as of right now. If somebody is saying like right now, hey, did I miss the boat? Maybe on this recent bounce back we've had, which I think has been like $140 billion from the bottom of the crypto market in general. Like let's say short to medium term right now, kind of what's your outlook on the market as we're kind of in this, in the range that we're in right now? Any specific thoughts on, I guess, just Bitcoin maybe leading the charge, or altcoins overall as well?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be making Bitcoin all-time highs anytime soon. But I do think that for the moment, until I'm proven otherwise, I think the bottom is in for a little while.
Sure.
So I think what would be interesting for us perhaps, and what makes sense a little bit to me, and this is, I'm still working on this, but like some long-term sideways accumulation, but not like on the very bottom. Like
Sure.
Bitcoin is worth something. There's massive network effects with Bitcoin, and I do think personally that anything under that $5,000 or $6,000 mark is a straight up steal. Like it makes no sense for Bitcoin to be that cheap to me, because I do think Bitcoin alone eventually can have $1 trillion valuation all by itself. So no, I don't think you're too late. Like if I say Bitcoin alone can be worth $1 trillion, the question is, can you get double the Bitcoin for that, for whatever you're willing to put in? So if somebody's got $10,000 to put in the market, well, that gets you what, close to one Bitcoin now. Well, it's going to make you pretty salty if you could have gotten two Bitcoin if it goes down to $4,000 or $5,000. So that's what you're trying to time. But I'm in this for the move to Bitcoin going to 50, $100,000. Some people have predictions that it'll be $250,000 plus. I'm down with that. I'm going to have some Bitcoin in cold storage for the long haul. I've got Bitcoin savings accounts basically for my kids. That's my conservative trading portfolio. I'm total degenerate with my own. But no, I don't. I think you're early, especially to crypto, and I personally think Bitcoin has a massive advantage in being the dominant cryptocurrency for the future. So you're not too late. And the question is whether the bottom is in on this particular market. Are we going to see something like 2013, which would be like a quick return to new highs? So a crash, a short accumulation, and then boom, big move, or more like 2014, which is the hangover
That
effect
wrecked
from
me.
that. But yeah. So you were involved. Like that's Mount Gox, and that's China, and it's all this crap.
Everything.
Um, so now there's a whole different series of fundamental effects that might have to play in to make that happen. It's totally possible. You know,
Yeah.
if the US brings down the regulatory hammer, that could have nasty effects. And that's why I think we need to be prepared to take profits. We need to be unafraid to go to the dollar sometimes. But in general, I'm personally wanting to maintain my exposure because in the long term, I do think that this is going to pay off. But we need to be nimble in the near term in order to hopefully maximize what we're doing. But it just depends on your strategy. Like there are certainly advantages to saying, screw this, I'm buying Bitcoin, I'm holding it, not touching it. I'm getting those long-term capital gains because you mentioned on a recent episode how you think the tax effect was real. It's absolutely real. Like if you consider the fact that, take someone's average portfolio and they made 300% in 2017 and they realized a lot of
Pretty
those gains and
conservative
then they
too.
lost. Yeah, and then
Like
they say they lost, 70% of their USD value. Well, now just to pay their taxes, they have to wipe out their whole account. I know plenty of people, and I myself had like a hard look at what the tax situation was. Fortunately for me, like I saved some of my because some stuff it really pumped hard in December, and I was like, I'm not selling this crap in the last week of December because that's going to
I
be a
felt
tax
the
event.
that was Cardano for me. I was like, I can't, I don't want to sell it. Like I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
pay a ridiculous amount of taxes on this right now. And then, uh,
And
yeah,
I legitimately could have been in a situation where I would have had to wipe out my account had I sold in December, kept it in the market, took the drawdown, and then have to pay taxes. I could have personally been in the situation where I wipe out my whole account. So I think it was definitely real, the tax implications of that move. So for some people, um, unless you can beat the effect of long-term capital gains versus short-term capital gains, unless you can beat the fork dividends, if you will, where you get your scam forks and then you cash them in, send them back to Bitcoin. Uh, Holding the coins that you believe in for the long term, greater than a year, greater than 2 years, could be the answer, and not trading. Like, most people are trading when they really shouldn't be trading. And if you are looking at your Bitcoin balance, I hope everyone has this in the spreadsheet somewhere where you say, this is where I put new fiat in, and this is what it would be worth today if I never touched it. And if that amount is lower than your trading balance when you're looking at this stuff every day,
You're doing it wrong.
maybe rethink. Yeah, maybe rethink
You're
what
doing it
you're
wrong.
doing there. So
Um,
anyway,
yeah, it's a really solid point. I mean, that's a really damn solid point. So one question I think that's solid. Is somebody just mentioned, audio white papers mentioned, can we talk about some fundamental TA strategies that a beginner should look into? And I know you have your own, so you have a full website right now too that I think goes over a lot of this stuff, but maybe if somebody is brand new, and myself personally, so I've like done a tiny bit of diligence into, like a little bit of diligence into TA. Sometimes it's clicked a little bit, sometimes it just hasn't. But if somebody like myself who really doesn't have a background in technical analysis or audio white papers here, anybody is looking to start learning a little bit more, like how would you recommend going about that, and maybe what are some initial types of things that somebody like that should be looking into?
yeah. So for technical analysis, you really want a chart. You need chart history. And when you don't have chart history, and a lot of times we get something where it's a new listing on Qcoin or
Yeah.
Binance or whatever, and there's no history. So really, you're doing TA on low time frames in order to develop a chart, right? Because you can chart something on the 1 minute, and like you can see the same type of patterns that play out. The technical analysis still lives on the 1 minute that it does on the daily or the weekly. Now, the longer time frame that you have, the better understanding that you can get for the trend, and therefore how to trade it. When they're newer, so let's say you have a situation where somebody did an ICO and now they're on Binance and it's been there for like a week or two. You only have limited information. So the first thing I'm going to look at on a new coin, let's take one. I have no position in it. I just know that it exists and stuff. So there was one called like Zilliqa. I'm not
Yep.
sure if you're familiar with the project.
Yeah, I did
And I
some
think,
research on that.
yeah, so basically I've understood that the fundamentals are fairly sound. They're doing some kind of like, smart contract platform, but then like sharding and
Yeah,
scalability is the
sharding
big thing.
implemented, yeah, like
And
PBFT, all that good stuff.
yeah, and there's a few investors that I've heard speak out about it positively. This is not a recommendation by Zilliqa, but now you have it on Binance, and I'm saying, okay, well, what's like, I'm up at the plate. I'm not there's no history of this game, but I can like look into the picture and like figure out like what's who is this person? What school did they go to so I can know what I'm looking at here. So you can, for something like that, you can see like, well, what was the ICO like? Did they raise $25 million or did they raise $250 million? And then what did it list for when it hit Binance? Is this at a 10x for existing investors, or 100x, or is it below the ICO price? And the sweet spot for me is when you can find something that's either close or relatively close to the ICO price, and they just have a stellar team.
Hmm.
And you just feel like, maybe it came on at the wrong time, I guess, for the ICO market. Like Dragon Chain had this effect where like Bitcoin was ripping and ICOs were just like
In the
all this
dumps.
slope downhill. Yeah, it's like terribly in the dumps. And they did their ICO at a time where they raised under $10 million. And when it listed, it was like right when the market turned, and it was a perfect formula for them to go crazy. So that would have been a good example where you're getting something cheap, but you do have solid fundamentals or whatever. I recently did this with Wan Chain, and I have a friend, my podcast co-host sometimes, Derek
Derek?
Walchek. Yeah, so Derek,
I met Derek at a Chain event in Miami at the
yeah,
big yeah, that's where I met
awesome. Well,
Derek.
Derek's great. He does like tons of fundamental analysis on these projects. And he did their ICO, and he was like, man, if you can get Juan for anything under like $3 to $5, just do it. So when it came on, I had an understanding of some of their fundamentals, and they had a pretty big delay from like ICO to listing, because they didn't list until they launched their primary chain. And there were some people that just held the coin for months and wanted to get rid of it. They wanted the money for something else. So it had like a slow dump after it went on to Binance. So I was basically waiting, like, what's my culmination event here? So I'm looking for consolidation and to find out, when is this starting to narrow, meaning your buyers and your sellers are coming to an agreement of like, all right, this is the time period. This is where we're hitting that event that's going to allow it to go up or down. And that's when I bought. And then I just kind of waited a little bit to let the market shake out. And eventually it ran, because it's a good project with good fundamentals. So without chart history, you kind of have to rely on that. And then like buying day one is very dangerous. I've bought stuff on day one before, just because, it goes like
You're throwing the
80%
dice.
up and down. Yeah, you're totally throwing the dice. And I've done it to where it worked really well. And I've done it to where I took an 80% drawdown over the months after that. And then it was like, oh, well, that one was a bust. When you have chart history, you can get into this idea of the market cycle. And everybody points to that stupid Wall Street market cycle, but they point at it because that's the way these market cycles work. And when you're pricing relative to Bitcoin, especially, you see that on like the Sia coin and stuff. And you see the market cycles play out. And when everybody's like really sad about it, really, really sad, like they're making fun of it. It has dumped so hard. But if it has a fundamentally decent case, that's a great time to buy. And I've done exactly that. I made fun of EOS literally on the bottom. I was watching it as they did this year-long ICO, and I mean, it was just this terrible, terrible slope. And the day I made fun of it, like, hardest on Twitter, I don't even remember exactly what I said. I can look it up.
It 2x'd you.
That was the turnaround day. It would have been the best buy. And that's what you want to look for. And if you know enough about the teams or whatever to be able to make a call like that, that's the time you want to buy. Like when people FOMO into these 30% daily candles, you're rolling dice there too, just like when it's the day on the new exchange.
Totally. And what's up, Node Investor? I see in the chat there, and technical analysis doesn't work. Yeah, I mean, I'm totally on board. I think, your channel, you should probably just delete it, Node, and Ledger should probably delete his as well. I don't know why, I don't know why I'm talking to either of you guys, but here to learn. I'm just kidding. But taking a look at...
Some people truly believe that. Some people, I'm not...
The truth is always somewhere in the middle of everything, is kind of my opinion,
Yes.
I think it's always...
You're just giving... In my view, technical analysis is just the representation in a graphical format of the investor psychology, and it just gives you an edge. It's like saying that you can't, you can't be good at blackjack. Well, that's not necessarily true. You can be better than another person at blackjack because you understand probability and odds. And it's the same thing for, poker. A lot of poker players come into this space. What amazes me is some of them are the ones that say, like, not to pick on Doug Polk, but I think Doug Polk's really smart, but he's basically a non-believer in TA. And I think he's the type of person that I could sell on TA because, like, he's a poker player. He knows that you don't go up against, kings with 7-2. Like, you just don't do it. Doesn't mean 7-2 won't win sometimes, but I'll take that bet with kings every day. So if I can take the right technical setup, it's like having kings instead of, queen 10 or whatever else, what other hand somebody has. It just gives you that advantage going into the rest of the hand to try to get a leg up.
That's awesome. I think it's a solid comparison too. And I don't play poker, so I don't know crap about poker. But yeah, I know I know Doug. I've talked to Doug a bunch, and yeah, Doug's come out and ripped, kind of joked around about TA, and I think it is interesting because there are some people that come out and they say, hey, TA is it's fake, it's whatever, it's blah blah blah. And then there's people that swear by it and essentially can pretty much make a full-on living utilizing it. So I think it's pretty incredible to see either way. One thing, and maybe I don't know if you have a specific. So Andre Jones had just put this in the comments here. I don't know if you have something that you specifically utilize in regards to this, but if you do any type of kind of fundamental background research on teams when you're looking at maybe in supplement to some of the TA that you're doing, is there anything that you utilize outside of like a Twitter or anything like that where you try to find, hey, before I put some money into this, I want to make sure that it's not fake Ryan Gosling working for this company or
Yeah.
the guys at Centra or whoever else.
I think the ones that are really bad are fairly easy to spot, usually because the underlying idea that they're trying to present on the website is way too vague, and it's got all the buzzwords and none of the real meat. They're not approaching something with a very specific problem. Like we want to bring liquidity and proper trading mechanisms in a decentralized way to the market. Like who does that?
Everything
So
decentralized.
right. But there's some of it's just in the copy. If you get into the team components, one of the things that I like to do is find out if you see an ICO and it's like this big project and they got a lot of team members listed. Usually, my guess is that that's actually some company, like some startup that has this blockchain spinoff of whatever they do in real life. And sometimes that's perfectly okay. But I just kind of want to know that up front, and I feel better when people are honest about that. So you can do the regular old legwork and go find those people, those individuals on LinkedIn and Twitter and see what they're saying,
Sure.
see how long they've been in the space. I also really like to see at least a couple of developers in the project that are actual blockchain developers, and they're not just like back end web developers. Like that's not the same thing. Like I'm a web developer, but I don't know the first thing about developing on a blockchain. You know what I
And
mean?
guys who know HTML and
Um,
CSS aren't great blockchain developers.
not necessarily, no. But to be honest, I'm not the like go-to person for ICO research type of stuff.
Sure.
Like I didn't do any ICOs in 2017, and it's a little bit of a touch and go type of thing. So I'm more of a I I can do that for myself. I hesitate to give people a ton of advice on how to find the right fundamentals in a project. But I do think there's some basic smell tests that you can do. And there are other people in the space that do a lot of fundamental research that I think you can get good advice from. But
Sure.
that's basics. Look at the team, see if they're active, see who their investors are. I have seen a lot of venture capital firms, and people are going to venture capital firms first, oftentimes, in order to get the initial funding, so that they're going to the ICO with an actual product of some sort. I think that's extremely important. Um, just generally, generally be careful and be skeptical first. Don't be trusting out of the gate, because that's the best way to give somebody money that doesn't deserve it.
Totally, totally. When you look at TA, is there anything specifically that you've been relying heavily on recently? Whether it's been, I don't know, some type of indicator, just some type of kind of setup that you've been really relying on a lot recently, or have found a lot of success recently. I'm just kind of curious if there's anything out there at this point in time that's kind of you've been favoring at this point.
So right now we're in this scenario where we've been at what appears to be the bottom side of the market cycle. So we're looking for trying to call either a reversal or confirmation of a new
And real
trend.
quick,
So
Elliott Waves, is that one?
no, definitely not Elliott waves. And my reason for that is not to pick on people that do Elliott waves, but uh, it's so specific to how the person setting up Elliott waves interprets it, and it's just not for me. One of the first things I like to do is get an idea of where is the trend right now, and the way for me to do that without my own lines and everything, chart patterns and stuff, is I can turn on the Ichimoku system. If you go to ledgerstatus.com/ichi, ICHI, then that goes to Josh Olszewicz or Carpe Noctem's YouTube series, where he does like over an hour going into the Ichimoku cloud and why it's valuable. But at a very baseline perspective, it tells you whether the trend is positive or negative. And as you get more advanced with it, you can use the same system to detect when is this overextended. Either it's been, it's gone way too high and you're like really far away from the cloud, or it's way too low and you're really far away from the cloud. And then you're looking for what's called mean reversion. You can do something very similar just with moving averages. So you can use like a 50-day moving average or a 200-day moving average. You look at the relationship between the two when they cross, the golden cross, the death cross, if you've heard of those types of terms.
Hmm.
But generally, if you look at price relative to, say, the 50-day moving average, one of the things you can do is wait until it gets over the 20-day moving average or the 50-day moving average, and then buy when the price gets over that, and then essentially ride that 50-day moving average as long as it's going up and set your stop below it. Like, that's basic. You can learn that type of technical analysis in very little time. And as long as you're diligent with it, then you can do well. I do think chart patterns have an incredible amount of value. Bollinger Bands can really tell you when there's volatility coming. So if you turn on Bollinger Bands and they're mega narrow, and
Hmm.
you have the history of the chart, when those Bollinger Bands get really narrow, especially on like the daily, I did this with Ripple recently. I hate Ripple. Have no. This is a counter to my fundamental analysis first statements before, but Ripple has a proven ability to pump, and I looked at it and I said, "Man, these Bollinger Bands are so freaking tight. This is either gonna skyrocket or it's gonna get owned." So I bought it. I bought it with tight B bands and just had a feeling it was based on the state of the market. And you got that volatility reaction off of it. And if it pops up, then you can ride that trend a little bit. Um, but in general, I look at everything first with the cloud turned on, the Ichimoku cloud, using Josh's settings, which is like doubled settings, to be a little more accurate, a little less noisy, but it's going to be slower to confirm the trend. So right now we're in this situation where we're seeing huge upswings. A lot of these coins have gone up 50%, 100%, and they're still not technically bullish according to the cloud. They may be bullish on the 4 hour or the 6 hour, but they're not bullish on the daily or certainly not the weekly. And with an altcoin, I'm usually going to use like 4 and 6 hour. I've really been loving the 6 hour. And then I'm, of course, going to use the daily. And then for stuff where you have more history, I'm going to look at the weekly chart as well. And I want to see accumulation zones. So like that horizontal, it's doing absolutely nothing type of thing. That's a sign that it's just building up steam. It's created a floor for itself. It's not like tanking anymore.
Hmm.
It's just in this rectangle where it's zone bound. And I'm looking for where can I buy it, even maybe towards the bottom of that rectangle if it's proven itself to hold that floor well, so that when it's ready to go, the Bollinger Bands will narrow down, and it'll go back and it'll try to come back to the mean because it's the cloud's up here and the price is down here. Break out of that rectangle or that accumulation zone and get that initial pump. And where we are right now is almost every coin has done that. And now we're at that point to where they're getting into that first resistance, and people are like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna get those all-time highs." We don't know that yet. Right now, we're in this place where it could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be the next day. We're gonna find out with a lot of these coins, and it'll be hit and miss. Like some have already made moves above those prior trends. Like EOS is going for all-time highs basically, but most of them are still like halfway up their prior all-time highs relative to Bitcoin.
Sure.
And what we're going to see is, are we going to get rejected off of that? So it's like a fake pump, basically. You go back down. And that's why you need to be prepared to take profits. And that's when I say, catch your 30%, your 40%. I really don't think we've accumulated for very long. Like it's been a pretty short cycle because we
Hmm.
just had an enormous run in December and January. So my gut is to say most of these coins are actually going to get rejected off of those resistance levels we're at right now, but not all will. And the cloud is helpful for helping you identify where that resistance is. And if it pops through it, it's going to give you an opportunity to trade that and go for a little longer. But if it starts to go down, like you don't want it more than a couple days, in my opinion, off of those zones before you are willing to take your profits. And there are going to be a lot of people on Twitter telling you to buy the dip. And um, depending on what Bitcoin's doing, I don't know if that's going to be the smart move. We've got. I don't know if anybody remembers September, but
I
it
do.
was it was a tough time for me. Because I listened to some of that buy the dip mentality, and you got the initial good run, and then we got rejected off of it, and it was buy the dip, and it flatlines for a little bit, and then bam, Bitcoin ran, and altcoins just got beat up for the next like 3 months, and you need to be willing to cut those loose. If you realize that you've gotten rejected off of those resistance zones because it just hasn't been long enough in those accumulation periods. A lot of people that are really, really, really good at this stuff are saying this is alt season. I'm not convinced yet.
Yeah,
Um, we've had a great few weeks, and I do not intend to lose the gains that I've made in those few weeks.
for sure.
I can say that. I've already actually sold plenty of stuff, and I'm kind of trying to collect into coins that either feel like they are coming up on those moves. But if I've already gotten a move off something, a lot of times I've already taken my profits. And I'm prepared now to either hedge my bets in case we get rejected with a short, or having some stuff in cash so that I can buy when it is the right time. And if we get rejected in a big way, I want to be ready to either go back to Bitcoin or back to cash, even depending on whether it's because Bitcoin got rejected off its own trend. It's a huge decision zone. We broke the downtrend. Everybody's like celebrating. We broke the downtrend. That's awesome. Except for like there's also the uptrend that comes from March, and we're like this into it right now. Like the price is just beaten into that uptrend from the underside of it. So Bitcoin is at resistance right now, and it looks a little overextended. So we're gonna find out if it can hold that above 8,000 zone and
Sure.
recollect itself, and then go back up to see if it can catch like 11.8 is kind of where I see as the next big test. But I think we have a good shot of that. I don't think we're gonna be back to 4,000 or anything anytime soon, but uh, just don't expect it to be at $20,000,
In the next 2 days.
next in the next 2 days, or even in the next 2 months.
Yeah, that's funny. One question I would have too, and I know you have a ton of, I think you have a ton of respect in the industry, but outside of that too, I know you mentioned Josh, Carpe Noctem, a couple other people as well. Is there anybody out there that you find as like very very helpful on your end to learn from, or anything like that, that you would recommend other people maybe try to learn from as well?
Yeah, there are some people that are really, really great teachers, and also very willing sharers. Um, and there's a mix. So people have probably also heard of Crypto Cred. He has some really great videos. He's really good at bringing some forex concepts into crypto. So just looking at horizontal price levels, price action, candle patterns, and trying to decide when is the right time to make these swing trades. So he's a great person to follow. Another person that I talk to pretty much every day is Johnny Mo, is what his he goes by. I think
Yeah,
it's Johnny Mo Trades is his Twitter. He's a momentum and breakout trader. So he looks at these chart patterns, and he can be in a trade for like 5 minutes sometimes, or maybe he'll be in it for 5 days. It just depends. He was on a podcast episode with me on Ledgercast, where he talked about his strategy for momentum based trading. He's a great trader,
yeah,
and he shares a lot of good charts and stuff as well. Beast Lorian is who I'm doing my 100x challenge with. So if you go to at 100x trading, that's a challenge where me and Beast are trying to 100x our Bitcoin. And we started it in like the depths of the bear market. So our first trades were both losing trades. And now I just hit 2x today. So I was pretty happy about that. But we're trying to do that in like 6 months or something. Um, I'm probably going to just keep it going until I hit it or lose it, one of the two. I hope not to lose it, but 100x is what, a 2x 5 or 6 times basically. So that's the way I'm approaching it. Is I
sure.
want to pull a 2x 5 to 6 times and see if I can 100x my Bitcoin. But Beast is a talented trader, been in it a while. He's so good at finding the thing that looks like it's doing absolutely nothing, and then the next day it's gone up like 150%. I don't know how he does it, but he does it. And he's a little behind me right now. He got stuck in a couple of nasty trades in the height of the bear market. I have no doubt he will make it up and he'll be ahead of me with one trade. Like it'll be some random coin I've never heard of, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I just pulled a 3x on that one trade, and I went all in on it." But he's a great trader. The guy with uh, serious bear goggles, which I really appreciate, and he's also been in the market a long time. He's one of the most skeptical people I know. Is crypto analyst. So I think his Twitter handle is crypto_analyst. I talk to him a lot as well. And he created a tool where you can actually statistically look at various things. Like you can measure the volatility in Bollinger Bands, and it's got the tightest Bollinger Bands of all the coins that are on Binance. And that's called crypto indexes. That's the tool he's building. He doesn't like say as much stuff, but when he says something on Twitter, it's worth listening
It's
to.
solid.
Um, and then I'll just mention a couple of more, some of the guys that have been around for a long time. If they've survived, they've been through all the markets and they're not as stressed out as you and they have more money than you. So they're worth listening to. So I would look at people like Jim BTC, Jaza, BTC VIX has been around forever.
Yeah.
Crypto Messiah has been around. Like talk about an altcoin degenerate. I talk to him a lot. I mean, he's a great trader. I would never want to say like I'm shorting this and he says I'm long. I would be terrified. And then people that tell you not to follow them, someone like Nomad or Crypto Cobain, like says that he provides nothing valuable, but like pretty much every time he
And then
tweets,
yeah, and then
it's
tells
either
you, or
it's
then tells you market buys 500 Bitcoin at the absolute bottom and
yeah,
just absolutely murders that trade and kills it and makes a shit
yep.
ton of
He's
money.
either like a total jerk when he tweets, or it's like absolute gold,
Or it's do
whatever he
exactly what he
shares.
says because you're going to make a ton of money if you do.
That's right. I could give you a lot of people. Find people that you trust. I
That's
even have.
funny.
I'll try to link up a Twitter list where it's some of the people that I follow that I consider particularly worth listening to.
Awesome, awesome. So real quick too, I know we're coming to the end of the hour here, and I know you have obviously your YouTube channel, and then you recently launched, I think, your website as well. Where can people go to find you? And I know you're doing a couple interesting things, like you have your newsletter, you have the Crypto 101. Tell everybody about what you're doing there, so that they can find you and learn as much as possible from you in the future here as well.
Yeah, so I've been perpetually saying I'm launching this thing called Ledger Status Learn. So if you go to ledgerstatus.com/learn, I haven't launched it yet purely because I want it to be right,
Hmm.
and that means balanced with my other business and the things that I'm doing in life. But essentially, that's going to be mostly evergreen learning material. That's general market analysis tools combined with crypto specific elements that you can pretty much go, you can watch and read anytime. That's video based course
Sure.
style stuff in combination with more regular market updates and then community components. But it's not like a private group. I hate that term for one. But it's whenever I see those, people are just charging enormous amounts of money. But the way I'm looking at this is it's a course. Hopefully, by the end of a year, you will have met people that allow you to go do your thing successfully. You will have learned the technical analysis, market analysis tools, and it's going to be in like the $300 something range for the year. So hopefully that's
Awesome.
a little more accessible for people. And then, yeah, the podcast, and I'm going to have you on the podcast soon, so I'm excited about that. I try to bring on people that have something to share, and
For
I'm
sure.
just learning stuff like everybody else. Like I said, I've been in this a year, and I'm one of those people that's extremely curious. And when I'm curious, I just dig and dig and dig until I feel like I know it. And I have a feeling I'm not gonna know everything I feel like I need to know for a long time to come. So I'm excited to be in this space.
Yeah, totally. And I appreciate you taking the time to join today. And apologies to anybody for any issues on my end with the internet. I think the stream might have cut out here or there, so apologies on that end. Wasn't expecting that, but sometimes you got to roll with it. So that's life. But yeah, Ledger, really appreciate you taking the time to join. I will include, after this video kind of uploads and does all that with YouTube, I will include a lot of the links to the people you mentioned, as well as your website and your Twitter. If you're not following Ledger already, you're making a big mistake, as well as all that good stuff. So definitely take the time to do that. But if anybody has any questions for myself or for Ledger afterwards, throw them in the YouTube comments now, and then hit the thumbs up button. That'd be fantastic, just so we get this out to as many people as possible. But I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today, man.
Thanks for having me. I can blabber on about this stuff for hours, so I appreciate it.
But I don't know. I don't know if the family wants that. So, oh, well, I appreciate the time, man. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
Take it easy.